Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is October 12th, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a true pleasure to be here with Brian Woodbury, and that's Brian R. Woodbury, right?
That is.
That's our, our meaning O-U-R, because we're related, sort of.
Cousins-in-law.
Yeah, we're cousins.
Thank you for having me, Jerry.
Oh, I am so thrilled. This is a real special one for me. And you're sure you're not Brian W. Woodbury?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, first question is, where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Silver Lake, Los Angeles.
How cool is that? First question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
What's the best thing for a human being? What's the best thing for a human being? I'd say being among people who love the person and whom the person loves.
Beautiful. That is,
it's kind of trite, but
no, but Brian, that is not trite. This is my theme is exactly what Eden Abe, who wrote Nature Boy, said. The greatest lesson you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return. Yeah. Notice you said both, so that was good. Yeah. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
I guess music.
Yeah,
I would say music because for me, music comes in as a musician. I think most musicians and musical people kind of are like this. Music comes in on us in a different way from other information. Yeah. And music, of course, isn't just information. It's an emotion. It's emotions, and it's also sort of a collective way of experiencing things, experiencing time, experiencing emotions. So yeah.
No,
so I think I don't know if I should say it's my favorite. It's the predominant way that information comes in, because often, like if music is playing in the background, my ear is usually focused on that, regardless of whether I should be paying attention to something else. Yeah. Or if I'm watching a movie and the score is interesting or bad or really great, it's going to take my attention sometimes away from the film, from the dialogue or whatever.
Yeah. No, and Brian, you really get it, because I love that you said, I guess music, because that's what I'm after, is your hunch, your guess, your intuition, first thought, best thought. But just to double on what you just said was, when I hear Jimi Hendrix sell a TV commercial car, I go, fuck, why'd she sell that for? And then I go, dude, you can hear Hendrix for 30 seconds. That's great. Why not? Why not celebrate?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It does, like how you use. So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Why do we collect or gather information? That's wow. I mean, that's just the way we're built, right? Oh, here goes the sinking microphone.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you actually answered this. The third question is, so you think it's innate in humans to collect information?
It seems to be.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Well, no, usually people say curiosity to make the world a better place. So it's all good.
Oh no, I think it's much more fundamental than that. I think it's a sort of habitual. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to deal with this microphone, because the stand, the thing that's propping the microphone in place is giving out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But if I don't deal with this, we will have bad sound on my end. So I want to try to solve this problem. I think it's much less of a. I mean, there are good practical reasons that we we use for gathering that it's important that we gather information for.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think isn't it true of all species that that's kind of one of the things that they are doing is they're sort of ascertaining the aspects of their environment that are meaningful and productive and or threatening to them. So I think it's just the whole information gathering is kind of a primordial thing that goes back to the single cellular beings, that we always kind of scoping out and I think people are just good at it and they have memory, so they can, the memory, and they have history and writing and being able to record things. So we're just better at it than the other creatures. But I think it's
Well,
just kind of a natural way of doing things.
You touched on a lot of topics we're going to go into. The next question is one you brought up: do thoughts create emotions?
Oh yeah, don't you think? I think so. I mean, something can occur to you and then it'll sort of trigger some weird feeling.
So fill in the blank, Brian. I don't know what I think until I.
Yeah. I don't know what I think. I don't know what I think until I kind of think about it more.
That's fine. Yeah.
I don't know what I think until I kind of go over something. Although, I spot off the top of my head all the time. So I guess I kind of know what I think. But sometimes I will have to reconsider what I said. So, yeah.
Because, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is, I don't know what I think until I contemplate it.
Yeah. I mean, but it's true. I mean, you do kind of, you spout things when you go through life, you in the conversation, you're just spouting what comes off the top of your head. But I also, there's also the reconsidering what you've said, what you've thought. And I think that's super important. I even wrote a song about not being spontaneous, or about the value of that being spontaneous is overrated, because I think I always find with writing, a really important part of writing for me is rewriting and reconsidering and kind of working it out and making it more, honing it, chiseling away at the object you're whatever carving.
What you're working on, because I know, because I've done this with you for years, like parties, like I said. And I'm the one thing is, I asked my mom, could I interview you? And she said, yeah, but tomorrow I might say all the answers differently.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to hold you to these answers. Like, I didn't mean, people sometimes write that, like Phil Proctor's, I should have answered it differently. Or I finally come up with an answer to this.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's good though. I like the being able to come up with the real answer and revise.
Right. No, but see, we're doing something spontaneous, but
we are.
One of my favorite lines I ever got when I was working for George Carlin, someone sent a flyer in and it says, I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity.
That's great.
And I've repeated that line a gazillion times, because that's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to be spontaneous here. So can humans think without language?
Yeah.
What's more fundamental, language or music?
This is a really interesting question, Jerry. There's some people, I read half of a book called The Singing Neanderthals. And I haven't finished the book, is what I'm saying. And it doesn't come right out and say, but he speculates, or he quotes some speculation that has been made that music may predate language. So, I mean, music is manipulative in that it elicits an emotional response. For instance, there's that Leonard Cohen song, Hallelujah, which is a
Yikes.
huge, everyone loves this song. And I don't think it's one of his great songs. I love, I really like Leonard Cohen, but, I'm just thinking of this because someone was mentioning it on Facebook. And I think the power of that song is the word hallelujah,
Yeah.
which we have all these connotations and these religious feelings. And it has this, oh my God, it goes back thousands of years, and that's all baked into that word. If he'd said, Aunt Jemima, Aunt Jemima, it would be nothing. But it's that word has all the power, and it and that's, I'm kind of making the opposite point of your question. I
Yeah.
think you could also, there are like stupid songs that have really dumb lyrics, but the music is so
Yeah.
moving that it makes you think, oh man, I want it that way. Tell me why. Oh my God. Oh, it's a really moving pop song. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really hooky, but it's also like, it's really heartfelt. And it's like the words are complete nonsense.
Right.
They don't even parse. And
Right.
apparently it was, I read about it. Apparently there's like a rewrite from an original, which was more dark or something, but, and, written by a Swedish pop song writer, of course. But anyway, maybe that's not even a good example, but there's plenty of there's plenty of songs where you are moved despite there being really nothing to be moved about other than the fact that there's emotional music that elicits an emotion.
Yeah, no, dude, it's great. And we should skip these philosophical and go right into music, because this is
Okay.
too important. This is too important because, Hallelujah is a perfect example. They made a fucking whole movie about one Leonard Cohen song,
I
and
know.
song he disowned. He said, I stop. Blah. And this guy sings it on the boardwalk 5 times, where he used to sign it 5 times a day. And he's really good. And I
Yeah.
have booked him in my events. And
Yeah.
I said, you are not allowed to sing. And then the whole audience says, shut up, Jerry, let him sing it.
Let him sing it, of course.
He's an original songwriter. Sing your own shit and don't sing fucking Shrek songs. It ain't Leonard Cohen anymore. No, people don't know it as Leonard Cohen. They know it as Shrek, so.
Yeah.
But your word thing is important, because that's why Frank Zappa is a Spike Jones wannabe, and you study with Tom Lehrer, because they do that with the words. They say, what the fuck are you singing about here? And they make that. That's why yeah.
Say what?
No, that's exactly what you're saying is, when you sang Aunt Jemima as Hallelujah,
right.
you made your point so much more clear than explaining it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's true. Spike Jones and Tom Lehrer and Zappa as an example of, sort of playing with the mockery and the playing with what the power that music has, and then skirting very close to mockery of, or actually just using it mockingly in all kinds of ways, but still always using the music as kind of the grease that makes it happen.
Right. Yeah. And that's like the medium is the massager. There's the form and there's the content.
Yeah.
And so you can't separate them, but we
No.
think we can, because we have. So it's like a couple of these. Your observations of humans in general. Are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings? I know it's both, and it depends, but just if you were going to say a little leaning towards one or the other.
Yeah, it's really hard to separate them, because there's always some content to your, well, maybe there's not always some content to your emotion. Speaking for myself, there's usually some content to my emotion. I'm not usually filled with some feeling and not have any idea where it comes from. Although, I don't know, maybe I'm full of shit.
That's Brian. That's why you're on the channel. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's not called like, I'm probably full of shit. It's probably, but it is. You know, I'm glad you said that because this woman a couple months ago, I say these more questions, and she goes, "The word more doesn't function in your question." Because then these other people go, well, it's a cop out because I'm asking you to give me a little inkling towards one or the other, and people go, no, it's both. So that's
well, I think here's the thing: it's hard to know. I've long noticed that I always assume other people are more like me than they really are. Like from when I was a kid, I always assumed, people sort of had. I just kind of, unquestioningly, when I was little, I assumed everyone had kind of the similar cultural background, not cultural, not specifically like ethno-cultural, but just were familiar with the cultural references that I was familiar with, and very soon realized, that my parents raised me in one particular way and everybody else's parents raised them in their own particular ways. So, but it's a continual learning experience to my whole life to be like constantly surprised that other people don't think the way I do. And and everybody probably has to do that to some degree. I mean, maybe some people are more sort of grasp that early on. But it's still like, I'm still coming up against things that I'm really surprised when I see the way people think. So as someone who thinks a lot, I may sort of be guessing that other people think a lot like I do, and I'm probably wrong. So it seems like there's plenty of examples of people who are less thoughtful going about doing dumb things.
Well, Brian, 80 to 90% of people, when I say, are we more feeling or thinking, they go, we're more feeling. And so that's fine. But Bridget Bardot says, I don't think when I make love. And it's like, good luck. How can you just shut your brain off? But you're doing the most sensuous body thing you can do. And it feels like you should, but it's not, that's all right, because that's like meditating. They go, now think about not thinking. But let's go back. You brought up youth, and this is good. At 11 years old, you're starting to write songs, let's say. Because I know, because, with my wife, your cousin, Susie Williams, you guys wrote a song together at age 12, and you both blossomed into these, maestros. So this is the question, Brian. At pre-11, what are you hearing music on? Live, on the radio, some other format, vinyl? And where's the tipping point where you go, oh, I can do that? Because, I sat with your dad and sung Christmas carols, and you can see that had a root in you for your love of the beauty of sharing song together with people. And so, but where is it where you're going, well, I can do that? And then you write a song at 11. Like, is there a tipping point, sort of hearing someone, watching someone, something?
It's, I always really loved music from when I was very little. My parents would play a couple of records that I really loved, which was excerpts from the Mozart opera Don Giovanni, and the recording of the Beggar's Opera, which I don't know what recording it was, but it's something done probably in the 50s. It was done many, many times. And those were, I just listened to those a lot when I was like 4.
On vinyl, on 12-inch?
On just regular LPs,
12-inch vinyl,
I mean, I would ask them to put it on, and I would like pretend to sing along and stuff. I like the opera voices, and I had this idea of what, like, when they were singing when I would listen to the Mozart one, I had this idea of I imagined what the lyrics were about. They were in Italian, so I didn't know what it was. But so I was always really into it. And then typical, just the Beatles,
Yeah.
was the thing. My brother got me bought some Beatles records that we listened to a lot, and then I just.
But on the Beatles for a second, was it the visual of Ed Sullivan or just the music? Was
It
it
was the album. I mean, I remember seeing the Ed Sullivan thing too. I was very little.
Yeah.
I was 5, but I was like, and thinking, wow, that's weird. They look like girls. But then but I think it was, he got like Rubber Soul or something. And I remember my friends and I listened to that, and we were like, oh. And even before that, we had, had a band, but it was, kind of by around third, fourth grade, we started listening to it. And then 5th grade, I was like, I should write songs. So.
But then again, now write songs means lyric writing.
Yeah.
So there is a great moment in your PR press kit where you're in front of the Brill building. That is a great shot. And the great question is they ask the Brill building songwriters, what comes first, the lyrics or the music? And they say the phone call.
Phone call, yeah.
Like, give me Brian, I need a trombone song right now.
Yeah, right.
Other Brian. So what was it like? Did you grow up a reader? Because I know your mom's, intelligent reading kind of person, and your dad. Yeah. Did you grow up reading poetry or lyrics? Because you just brought up an important thing. You're hearing the opera, and it doesn't matter really what they're singing. You like the sound, but there's some lyrical content. So are you affected by your lyric writing more by other lyric writers or by poetry and literature too, or what?
Lyric writers? I'm not. I've never been. I'm almost been a slow reader, so I don't. I don't read all that much. I read a lot of magazines and articles and stuff like that. I don't read too many books these days. And I'm not really a literary guy in terms of like reading a lot of books and reading a lot of novels and poetry, to my detriment, no doubt. I a lot of times I get lost in literature. So but lyrics I can follow, and
but I wouldn't say that's detriment, Brian, because you go to the great lit crit of America, Harold Bloom, and he said kids started to learn things by the lyrics. So we just grew up learning from lyrics. There's this great woman author. She says, my mom never read a book. She was in the Bahamas, and she knew what to do when a tsunami hit because a song lyric told her.
Oh my God, that's great.
She didn't go to like a sign that says do this, or a book that, oh my God, Google, what do you do when there's a tsunami? It's like the song told her. So that's what we grew up with. Our song telling us. I mean, that's why but here's the bottom line question. What's the function of music?
I think you've asked me this before. What is the function of music? I have a kind of odd theory about music, that it is a collective way we experience time.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I think it's more than this, but I think if you and this is probably true in other sort of human activity, where a group of people get together and get into some kind of state, some kind of a slightly elevated state, like maybe a religious service or even like a sports thing. But at any rate, you're collectively participating in this music. You're either listening to it or you're singing with in this group, and you are and music is divided. Generally, most music is divided, is got divisions of pulse. It's got a beat, and and those, you have strong and weak beats. You have a sense of So it's like it's a very fundamental kind of timekeeper.
Yes.
Before we had, before we had watches with the second hand, we had music that already did that in our mind, and you know where you are in a piece of music. And another way to for you to know where you are is the tune is going up and down, and then you know where that is, and it's telling you a story in its as it goes. So it's keeping your interest, so you know what is, so you have a frame of reference. It's not some kind of random thing. It's a very clearly demarcated thing. So music is this very elaborate way of, to how do we know we're in a different place? Well, we change the chord, or we change some other aspect of the accompaniment. So there's this. So in some sense, music is just this elaborate timekeeper. But the other aspect of it is like when you are, like you can sit down and listen to a piece of music, and it can compress a large amount of time into a small amount of time, or it can take a small amount of time and expand it into a large amount of time. So your subjective experience of the amount of time you've spent is altered by the content of the music you're listening to, and it's also altered by the other people that you are listening to it with. So that and which is something I've long noticed. Like, if you play a piece of if you play a recording for other people, it will sound different. You will hear how they're hearing it, even if you don't look at them, even if they're behind you. You can feel how they're hearing it by the way it sounds to you. So, this is like a psycho, an extra.
Psychosomatic.
Well, yeah, it's like something beyond
beyond the body.
Well, I don't know if it's beyond the body, but it's some extra music, some extra. I don't know. I'm blithering.
You mean like ESP? It's like
it's kind of like that. There's some aspect of telecommunication or some kind of extra communication beyond the normal. It's like just the vibe that you get from other people. It's the thing that we experience all the time.
The word vibes is good, because it's like when Vinnie Colaiuta and Frank Zappa communicated with each other. It's magical. Nobody gets that, Doesn't matter. You try, but it's like, it because you played with musicians for 40 years and you can communicate with them. And James Brown nailed it. He said, I've got a move that tells me what to do. Like a move. It's like that sort of, that's telling you what to do. Well, how can that's like, well, I've got some music, but you really touched on a lot there. And James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. He checked, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I go outside and see a real tree? And years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? And you've written theater. Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I don't know. I feel kind of guilty about this sometimes because, I do live in a world of make-believe a lot in, I'm making up songs and stories about people. And, there's plenty of real life that is in need of, people.
Well, you shouldn't feel guilty, Brian, because music's one of the greatest healing forces ever. It's a healing force, but you're saying, well, I'm not feeding the poor with my music, and blah, blah. But that's cool. That's a reflection, I think, of how your parents raised you and how good of a human being you are. But
or bad.
That make believe thing is amazing, because why do we think we have to make believe? But that goes right to intention. The intention question is, a screenwriting teacher told me great film or great art, great music is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great film, great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a song?
Well, the intention in creating it is first and foremost, but I don't think that necessarily translates into the how you experience it. I think, here we go again. I think that, I mean, I think there's only so much you can achieve with your intention, and it can, you can try to make it so that it comes off a certain way, but it doesn't necessarily come off that way. That's the first thing, and then the second thing is, um, there's a certain aspect of creation at all, in any way, that's just kind of beyond. You kind of have to sort of just set yourself in the right direction and then wait for the muse to kind of come up with the thing that's gonna happen. It's a lot of it is, there's, you know uh, like when you write, like when I write a melody, it never feels so much like, when I come up with a melody, I don't feel so much like, aha, I'm coming up with a melody. I'm just sort of channeling
Yeah,
something. I mean, everyone, most songwriters say this. It's something that kind of just flows to you, rather than something that you are like painstakingly, now I shall play an A sharp. And, although at some point you come up with a thing, and then you're like, maybe it would be better if it did this. And then you,
right.
kind of manipulate it. And then you get all, oh, I'll do the A sharp there. But, there's still always this step back process, and kind of let it weave its own way. So in that sense, the intention, I mean, I'm always got like really clear intent, like particularly in my, more, in the last 20 years, especially, I've been very, very focused on what my intention
Yeah.
is. Like, I want to write a song that does this, I want to write a song about this subject, or I want to, do this kind of stylistic thing, or whatever the case may be. And, so a very,
Yeah.
very determined, but, sometimes it goes in some other squirrely direction that you don't
Well,
expect.
Brian, you used a lot of great words to communicate this. You said focus, channel, muse, and weave. So those were all really, they communicate a lot to me, and I appreciate that. In fact, when I worked at the Zappa Hotline, this kid calls up once, goes, "How does Frank do it?" And I goes, "Have you ever seen that scene in 200 Motels? He's sitting with music paper and he's pouring vinegar, and like smoke's coming up. And Frank's like script pushing the pen over, and the smoke's coming up on the music paper. And Ringo Starr is playing Frank, and he's going like this.
That's right.
Soul, brother, soul. It needs a little more soul, brother."
That's great.
So that's the next question is, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your audience when you're writing your song?
Um, hmm. Mm, 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 mm. I always have kind of an audience in mind. Um, well, no, I shouldn't say always. Sometimes I just like pick up the guitar and just blither and see what happens. But if I'm writing a song, I'm usually have, um, the idea that I want people to hear it and what they're going to get out of it. So
Yeah.
I have a,
There's another great verb you use, blither. Look at focus, channel, weave, blither, muse. Those are all great words because they
okay.
touch on everything. One thing you brought up, Brian, that evokes this one is, there's a Louis Buñuel quote: "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it." Now, 99% of people go, "That's good." And one guy finally said, "That's bullshit. If I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it."
Yeah.
And so the question is, the cliche is, the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey is more important?
um, I don't know if the journey is more important.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm not, I'm not interested in the process, enjoying art for the process as much as I am for enjoying art that has got a beginning, middle, and end. So
Yeah.
which kind of, I know there's a lot of people who there's a lot of people focus on improvisation, like, for free improvisation,
Yeah.
and which sometimes can be really great, but it's not my first most favorite thing,
Yeah.
because I kind of like a sort of more worked out thing. I don't like TV shows that are open ended, which are like where they come up with a good premise and then just kind of see where it's going to go. I like TV shows where they come up with a premise and an ending, and then they make it happen.
Yeah.
Go from A to B. So I'd rather. So yeah, the whole journey versus
Yeah.
ending. Although if you're just focusing on the ending, you're just like you're not enjoying
Yeah.
the whole
Well,
thing. So the whole thing should be, you know,
yeah.
nicely
Well,
worked.
Brian, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these
No,
questions, but
that was the right answer,
well,
Jerry.
you did it. You took it up. That was the right answer. No, you literally. I am fishing for answers from the
Mhm.
people I interview, and if they don't answer it like the way I think, that's all right. And it helps me suss out a bigger picture of the world. But I do
Well,
say that.
you're very, very open-minded, and you like
Well,
to
I
entertain
try.
a lot of different ideas.
But I try to do that. But I'm just saying, we all probably, McLuhan said we invented point of view when we invented the vanishing point. In that he
Hmm.
says understanding is not having a point of view.
Oh,
But
wow.
we are, I say things like, I shock people at the music thing. I goes, Steely Dan, the Beatles, and fucking Beach Boy all suck. And they go, oh my God, you can't say that. But what you said was, that we don't, and that's the flaneur or psychogeography. In the 20s, these people changed the world of art forever in Paris in the 20s, and all they did was sit at coffee houses and do nothing. They were slackers, but they eventually, but they sort of like came up with this philosophy: just wander aimlessly and you'll bump into something. But
Mhm.
that was just part of it, because they had some sort of sense, like when
And some
Stravinsky,
talent.
yeah, they had talent,
Yeah.
they knew what they were doing. But this is the next question is, two of my film heroes, George Manupelli's mantra is ignore yourself.
Hmm.
Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And talk about free jazz. Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So
Yeah.
it's a stupid question, and I know it's both, and it depends, but it's basically just a jumping off. Is songwriting, music making, art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, culture, or environments are dominant?
Wow, that's an interesting pairing. Is it more self-expression, or is it more of a vehicle for the larger culture kind of
Yeah,
to speak through
good way to
you?
put it. Larger culture, yeah.
Mm. Gosh. Wow, that's really interesting. Uh, I I guess I would fall in the camp of more self-expression, but I really don't think of myself as a self-expression kind of booster. Um, Although I'm perfectly fine with it. I feel like, I mean, maybe okay, maybe it's the other one then. I feel like there are for me personally, I'm not in the self-expression camp so much. Occasionally I'll write about personal things, but I think I'm more interested in writing about many things, lots of like,
Yeah,
writing about fictional characters or other people that I know, or just things that are happening, or just interesting ideas. Uh, so I feel like So perhaps you said your second option was
like
the
a vehicle, like
a
vehicle
vehicle for culture
or
and
or
technology or something.
or channel, like you said. You could call it muse, but I put it in that world because, like, in asking people this, you'll love the guy from Negative Land. He said, when I asked him this question, he said, Missy Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms. And James Brown's drummer was in Ohio, and there's a factory on one side of his house and a train track on the other. So the fucking roots of funk drumming is,
Yeah,
and it's like a factory sound and a
yeah,
train track.
yeah, yeah,
And so that's, I mean, I mean it in that sense some way, but
yeah.
really, Brian, the hidden question here is, can art making, music making be egoless?
That okay. It may be possible. It's not possible for me, at least not yet. Um, so I think that's kind of different from being self-expression, but
Yeah,
because I feel like, there's particularly with the songwriting genre, there's a lot of people who are very self-focused, and that's their way of, getting getting excited and getting their juices going for creativity. And so they're focusing on their life or whatever they're
yeah,
feeling. Um, and when I was maybe a kid, when I was a teenager, I did that. That was my way of songwriting. But I'm much more interested now in a wider variety of topics.
yeah,
And and so I sense that in a sense that's the larger collective, um maybe it's like something that's in the air that we all that needs to be expressed in some way, but in terms of being egoless, it's certainly not true for me. I was a good, healthy or unhealthy amount of ego in, when
yeah.
I'm creating something. I was like, ooh, this will be good, they'll like this, and it's like whether it's delusional or not.
Well, that's Zappa all the way again. He said, "I just write this music for myself, and other people like it. That's a bonus." And it's like, yeah, dude, you're over romanticizing. This
Yeah.
is my take on it.
Yeah,
You,
yeah,
you
I would
grew
agree with
up.
you.
You grew up in a consumer culture. He said,
Yeah,
I'm a devout capitalist. And you grew up in a consumer culture. You know, if you hit this note or say this word, kids will buy your music. Then you'll
mhm,
be able to write some more.
yeah,
So it's not that he was, see, when I say self-expression, then I say, can it be egoless? That's where what you said was 90% of people, I go, can art making be egoless? They go, no. And then a year ago, someone blew me out of the water. They said, great art is egoless. And I went,
mhm.
whoa. And then a month ago, this lady says, it has to be this. And it
Has to be
was like,
egoless?
really, that art making has to be egoless, because what you're doing is, back to your thing, it's the collective way to experience time.
Mhm,
So there's the key word there is collective.
yeah,
If you just do, like John Lurie, fake avant-garde jazz, which he was my role model, I just, I can do that, blah, 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 and do it. And then someone comes along, one of Susie's musicians came and played with me. And he goes, dude, you got to go home and practice. And then I played with a few others, the pro musicians, and we played avant-garde. And I goes, I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm not going to follow you. You can follow me. I'm a fake expert. And the guy went, that was great. So it gave me the range that
right,
maybe if I do try it, I might get away with it.
yeah.
But that's the follow-up question, Brian, is what was the motive of the cave artists or the cave musicians? We don't have any recordings of them, but
Sadly.
but what do you think their motive was?
Uh, the cave artist? Well,
And the cave musicians and
cave
the cave,
musician I mean, cave musicians were, they probably did work songs, and they probably did lullabies to sing their babies to sleep, and they probably did, you know, songs to pass the time and songs to tell stories. Uh,
So no
They're
different.
probably saying love songs
Yeah.
to court each other.
So you're saying basically it's no difference with what they,
Probably.
yeah, it's the same motive.
It's
Yeah.
not that long ago.
It's no, well, it's
You
dude.
know, 30,000 years ago. It's not all that long ago.
Well, I
But
like that. Yeah.
but yeah, but I think but it's interesting. The cave art. I mean, you know, I think I think they think they kind of knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Kind of, sort of, like what we.
I would say they definitely knew what they were doing, but they were conscious. So let's go into Copeland. Aaron Copland says the four elements of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. First of all, we sort of know in common, the normal human knows melody, harmony, and rhythm. How would you describe what is tone color to the normal human, not who knows musical terms, like the lay person?
What is tone color?
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's what we had in when I studied music in college. That was kind of the main, the main factors in music. Tone color or timbre. I always felt like that was a little bit sort of taking. I mean, all that stuff is true. All that stuff is true, but it's timbre is can have different meanings. So, I mean, in one sense, you have these high frequency, have a certain frequency. There are characteristic sounds for every instrument and every voice, and that is what makes you be able to tell the difference between my voice and your voice is primarily the timbre of our voices, other than that our vocabulary is different. But there's so much to all of it, because like if you like music because you like the guitar sound of the guitar player, you're not just listening to it as timbre in a vacuum. Like, you could draw the spectrum of it, and you would see the waveform, and you would see this frequency is accentuated, and so forth and so on. But you're listening to it from a historic, you've got your historical, you've learned tone, you hear that, oh, that's an electric guitar. That's a voice. It's not like you're listening, you're like a lab auditory system that's just in a vacuum that's never heard sound before. You have this whole collective understanding of how tone works, and like you hear a clarinet, you think clarinet. I mean, maybe that's not true for a lot of musicians, and probably younger people who may not know instruments, or may not be exposed to instruments per se. They may not have that feeling. But for someone who's like us, who's listened to music our whole lives, we hear a saxophone, we think saxophone. We hear a bass, we know a bass, and we know the whole history of what bass is in music and all the music we've heard. So yes, the tone color is a key, is crucial, but it's not exactly in a vacuum in any way, And then also Pauline Oliveros, who I studied with in college, said, it's all, when you get down to it, if you take tone, if you slow it down enough, it's rhythm. It's just vibrations, and that's rhythm. So she said, really, all music is based on rhythm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So if you slow it down,
If you
slow, what's the it again?
The waveform is, a
The
waveform. Any tone is any tone is a if you slow it down, you can hear the actual beats, but what you are hearing is beats vibrating very fast. When you hear like a piccolo, it's vibrating faster than a bassoon, but it's still a vibrating it's your ear is vibrating, and she said that was rhythm,
Yeah.
when you
Well,
come right down
Brian,
to it.
you got to have ESP. I am insisting because here's my notes. Look at that. Pauline Oliveros was the next question before you mentioned her name because you said the word frequency. I'm serious. This was amazing. I was just about to, because you brought up frequency, I was going to bring in this question, which I pull out of the dustbin because this is one of my favorite music questions. And then all of a sudden you go into Pauline. So that was amazing. I met her in a parking structure in Santa Monica, and she's playing an
Was
accordion.
she playing accordion? Okay, I was
And
gonna say.
I told her about this, and she was a little snooty to me, but I loved her. And she's a huge influence, deep listening. So this is Bob Marshall's interview with Frank Zappa. He says, the LA Free Press in the summer of '69, Frank mentioned Pauline Oliveros' work with sound above the audible and below
Oh yeah.
creating a mass. So this is what Frank said, and I'm just curious if you expound on this. Frank said, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a some indifference tone,
Oh,
which
wow, yeah.
happened to be located within the audible frequency
Yeah,
range. By
interesting, yeah.
by combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle that
Uh-huh.
you could hear.
Yeah.
Whether or not, then Frank added some of his smartassism. Whether or not you like what you hear in the middle is another question.
Yeah.
He goes, then he toasts Pauline. The concept is brilliant.
Yes, yes.
So he was really complimenting Pauline, but go ahead, this high and low thing, correct?
Oh, well, I heard about that stuff in college. Um, and I think we did some experiments where we experienced some stuff like that. Um, I think that whole school of music was really literally experimental, where they were literally doing experiments with
Yeah,
sound. A lot of stuff gets called experimental that there's no experiment being done. They know what they're doing, or
yeah,
they're not trying to find anything out.
yeah,
But no, this literally there was a lot of it, and she had a really, she had a very kind of, um, I would call '60s kind of open-ended idea
yeah,
of music. She was very much, into sort of just, let's see what happens.
yeah.
And I was very much, no, I want to make something happen, and I want to determine what happens. So I was like, she was maybe not the best person for me to study with, because I may not have gotten all of what I could have gotten out of her.
But that could have given you another point of view, because
Yeah,
then you're studying with Jimmy Cheatham, who's worked with Duke Ellington and Ornette, and then you studying with Tom Lear. That gives you a big picture. But let's go back to the four elements. So we talked about tone color in your composing for
yeah.
your big bands or your country western music or your pop songs, your funny songs, very witty, melody, harmony, and rhythm. Do you say I'm more of this, or is it a constant juggling act? How do you navigate those three
Hmm.
major elements?
Yeah, I don't think. I don't think you have to be on one team or the other.
Right.
I think, and definitely, um, I like to have a melody. Yeah, I think it's very important to have an interesting melody. Um, but it's, I think I'm more, as a songwriter, I'm mostly not writing instrumental music, so the lyrics are super important too. So, there's
Right.
the whole, yeah, lyrics and music. But melody, I tend to be, um, melody is the king, and but you have to have some interesting chords. I love a lot of chords, and I like to have frequent chord changes in my music, and it's perhaps to a fault. I have a lot of chord changes. They change all the time. I like to fill in little bits with extra chords.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would
but
say
you know, rhythm, you know, that, you know, I don't think it's ever, sort of divvied up in, you know, but you do hear a lot of music that falls down on one level or another, and you can say, oh, I wish they had a better melody, or I wish it had more interesting chords, or I wish it had a better feel.
yeah. Yeah, I heard that Ry Cooder song on Paris, Texas soundtrack, and it was like it was a slide guitar and it went ring ring. You know, it was just two notes slide a slide the whole song. It was like amazing. I was like, I can do that. You know, you run home. It's like you know people like Fred Frith. I see Fred Frith play guitar at McCabe's, and then I go, I can do that. And you go home and you do stick knitting needles in there, and it's like, yeah, it didn't come out like that.
Well, he's got an incredible Fred Frith has an incredible melodic
Yeah.
sense,
Oh, yeah.
and harmonic sense. He's just very very inventive.
Well, he said yes to being on my interview, and then when I sent him the dates, he won't follow up. So thank you for following up and booking it, Brian. this is really fun. So the next one is my friend has the 3 T's of music: technique, theory, and taste. So you've learned the technique, how to play the piano, guitar. You know the theory. How does one acquire taste?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Do people acquire taste?
Well, that's the funny word is, how do I find the right verb? What's the aesthetic that you lean towards, liking Tom Lear and didn't lean towards somebody else? How do you acquire that?
I don't
I
know.
mean, like,
Okay, how do you acquire? I mean, I know of times when there were things that I didn't like, but I gave them extra chance because I thought maybe there's something here, and then I made myself like them. So you're sort of like acquiring, and like if you don't like lima beans or something, but people say, "Oh no, they're really good. Try them again," and you try them again, and like, "Oh yeah, they are good." So it's that's all I know is how do you acquire taste is just by exposing yourself to something that you may not think you like and finding that you like it. I mean, and I'm
Brian,
continually
that's the
doing
word I get the most is exposure, but they don't say to something you don't like. They go, I've listened to the radio and I got, and you brought up lima beans, and which is taste. So there's a gut feeling.
Yeah.
But it's why do we gravitate towards one or the other? Gravitate might be a better verb, but it is interesting how one person gravitates. And then that's a great McLuhan line. McLuhan says, carefully make plans, then do the opposite.
Oh, wow.
Like carefully not like lima beans and then try them once. You go, these are great. Why did I, not try them?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's only, I mean, it's like how long do you have to do that for is the real question I have. There's some music that I don't like that much, and a lot of other people love it, and every once in a while I go, oh, I should try that again. Sort of like I don't like. I mean, lima beans I've always loved, so maybe that was a bad example. Beets, I don't like beets, and every couple of years I'll be at someone's house and they'll have, oh, try some of the beet salad, and I'll go, oh, okay, I'll try it, and I don't like it. I was like, still, it's bad. So like every few years I will listen to the Velvet Underground and go,
oh, I hate them.
Everyone loves the Velvet. All my friends love them. Okay, I should listen to this. See what everybody loves about this, and I just like, yeah.
Oh, dude, we're on the same plane there, man. That is like so over. But again, I'm for people loving the Velvet Underground.
Yeah,
I know. I researched Lou Reed's teachers, a fucking Finnegan's Rake freak, Delmore Schwartz, and Lou Reed tried to make Edgar Allan Poe into rock music. So it's all good. But I'm like,
I feel like if the more stuff you can like, the better, really.
Well, I
But
don't know about like, but give it a chance. Because
yeah,
I'll tell you really quickly. The best example was this guy goes, I saw this new group at the Hollywood Bowl. They're called Goose, and they're the new Jerry Garcia and the Dead. I'm going, yeah, right. Okay. So I'll give him literally 3 seconds.
yeah.
I got off an hour later.
Okay,
I went down the Goose fucking
good for you.
and then it was like they're really refreshing, but they are just fucking fish dead clones, but they're doing it with refreshing enough to give me an hour. I probably will
Good.
never listen to them again. I gave them
Yeah.
a little more, but
Well,
it's sort of fun that broke through the 3 second,
yeah. And I feel like that. I mean, I feel like I do that too. I'm a real music snob, and I don't.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff that I don't like, and there's a lot of stuff I think I'm not gonna like, and and I feel like I have to fight against that, but at the same time, there is only so much time,
yeah,
and
hello.
and but you have to also keep in mind that sometimes you're not in the right mood, and
Exactly.
so like I mean I will listen to literally like you said 3 seconds or like five
Yeah,
seconds of a thing, but
I'm out of
just
here.
and it's like, and maybe they're making some bad choices at the beginning,
Yeah,
and maybe even though they made a bad choice at the beginning, there may be something good later on. So you know you never know, and it's it's a constant struggle to
yeah,
against the snobbery. um
yeah.
but
And
I
I
think
don't even
sometimes
think,
every once in a while I'll be like pleasantly surprised.
yeah, but
um
Brian, I wouldn't even say snobbery. It's you're an intelligent listener. You've put in a lot of hours of your life listening, and you have an aesthetic. And it's like, anyways. The next question is concerning this McLuhan quote. And since song is a lot of what you are about, song. It's your three things on your is composer, lyric, and band leader. But it
mhm,
doesn't say, and you said, I'm not, I don't want to say singer, songwriter, it's cheesy, but song is an amazing word. I looked it up,
mhm.
like the etymology of the word, where it came from. But here's the McLuhan line. I'm not saying agree or disagree, just your thoughts on wherever it goes. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Well, I'll read it again if you
No,
want.
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
Song is largely slowed down speech, although some song the speech goes super fast,
exactly.
like some rap goes super fast. There's a song on my new album where I try to do stuff, some very
Yeah,
very very fast stuff. But there's
but
so
he's
song is
saying
slowed down speech,
metaphoric.
and the difference and the difference in musical taste boils down to difference in language.
Yeah,
Wow. I don't know if it's entirely true. But I mean, there's certainly an element of truth to it.
yeah,
Um, though, if you look at the way music has spread historically around the world, clearly it's spread extra linguistically.
yeah.
So we've adopted music from cultures whose language we have not adopted. And that's so I think that it's more permeable than language. I mean, language is pretty permeable, but language is also you hold it very collectively. I think music is held maybe slightly less um, as a tribal identity, at least
Yeah.
nowadays. But it's certainly true that um, music does reflect language, but differences in language, meaning like differences in slang of young people versus the slang of old people,
Yeah.
and slang, differences in the way one you know one ethnic group within a culture talks to the way another ethnic group in the same culture talks. So there's a lot of subtlety to the whole thing, but it's an interesting
But
observation.
Yeah, thank you, because you really nailed it. Because McLuhan wasn't saying it as a statement; he teased people to think he was saying a concept, but basically it was a percept or a guess, like you said, a guess.
Uh-huh.
But it appears to be a concept. So he was always teasing people. In fact, his line applies. He says, "A half a truth is still a lot of a truth." So, if I say a statement, it's half true, I'm still getting a half out of you. So this is followed up with Chomsky said, language is not just words, it's culture, tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. So going back to a collective way.
Yeah.
What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
What's an instance of when language breaks down?
You're at the store and you ask somebody
Oh,
or you're trying to tell your kids something, or you're communicating with your wife
you
and
do gestures.
that was good.
That's language, though. I mean, that's a way. That's a kind of language.
I think one of your comrades I interviewed, I said, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Group hug." Yeah, that was
Always.
COVID too, and it's like, yeah.
I was driving across the country one time in the, I think maybe early 90s, late 80s. And we were in Alabama, and I stopped in like a little town at like a little convenience store, and I wanted to buy a candy bar. And I asked the guy, could I have I forget what kind of candy bar it was. Probably like a Almond Joy or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I asked for the candy bar, and he's like, well, and I said, okay, and I have a candy bar, and we just could not he couldn't understand what I was saying. I couldn't understand what he's saying. I just ended up giving him the money. He figured it out. I was pointing.
Right. Hey, what do you do when language breaks down? Give them money.
Exactly, Jerry.
I give you some money. Okay. So a couple more music questions. Super fun, Brian. You're really a great communicator.
This is really fun to talk to you, Jerry.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh. And it can't be like Spike Jones, because he's mainly known as
yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, what there's an instrumental that makes me laugh. Well, actually makes me laugh, or is just funny?
Well, that's good. You put it in the context you want. That's good. It's
I don't know. There's Richard Strauss's Don Quixote. It's got some funny bits in it. I think there's some funny Fred Frith on the Gravity album.
Nice.
It's kind of fun and kicking. I mean, it's kind of joyful and funny sometimes.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of humor in his instrumentals. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I wish I could actually sit and think of more examples. It would take me a while to come up with some.
I'll tell you one that I love, your the other Brian Woodbury song. I mean, totally brilliant, and totally brilliant filmmaking too. But when he starts taking his trombone solo, you go, "Would you mind?" Which is the most amazing flip of Zappa quoting the old blues guy saying, "Blow your harmonica, son." It's like, you don't go, "Okay, take a solo, dude."
Well, he's like, it's like during the vocal part. It's during like a vocal part, and he's like kind of doing these interjections, and I'm like, "Hey, stop it." Yeah.
This is what this guy JP Olson, great music writer. He got quoted. Anton Fier died the other day. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And he's quoted in the New York Times obit, and he told me an amazing thing. Like, these are the things I love, stupid little tidbits, but he said that Little Richard's scream was to let the soloists know it's their time to do their solo.
Really?
Is that fucking amazing? It's like, is that
It's more than that, though.
right? But it developed into it's like mine. I countered it with, do you know why John Lee Hooker wore sunglasses on stage? Because he didn't want people to know he was crying. And every time I say that, it makes me cry.
Why was he crying?
Because he's playing the fucking blues like he's bleeding
Oh
his heart,
man,
And
really?
so he wants people to think, I'm playing boogie music to fucking get you dancing and feel good. And who knows? I mean, this is when we read folk tales. So, Brian, this is a great music writer, Brad Ratliff. I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
He says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound. I don't know about the word need, but needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in one single note. So me and you could hear Miles and we go, that's Miles.
Yeah.
And so he said, Miles is fragile and pointed. So I'm looking for like 2 words that you would like to hear from a great music writer to say, what is the Brian Woodbury sound? Like Coleman Hawkins said, they said mellow and generous. Coltrane was slightly undercooked and urgent. And this was from Bill Frisell's book. And his was rubbery and woozy, which is pretty good. I know it's a stupid question, but
no, it's a good question. It's a hard question to answer about oneself.
That's what it is. People say that's hard, but I mean, just in general, what would you feel? Oh, I'm happy they said these 2 words.
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
That's all right. No problem.
That one's
that's why they have comment sections.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into music as comedy or laughter or what you've pursued. You have a sharp wit and it's intelligent. What's the function of laughter?
What's the function of laughter? As it relates to songs?
Well, and again, in context of your,
there's a lot of theory about what comedy is. I've read about it a bit, and our friend David Mish wrote a book about it.
I've had him on. I've done all these questions with him, and I've also had a podcast with him exclusively on comedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theory about it. I always find the theory a little less than satisfactory.
Yeah.
My dad was a high school teacher, and he taught a class in comedy, an elective in comedy for like 10th and 11th graders. And I remember when he was doing that, he told us all about what his research. And I always find the explanation for comedy for what makes something funny a little unsatisfactory, I have to say. Yeah. Like, oh, it relieves tension, or oh, it points out the absurd incongruity of 2 contradictory thoughts or something, and it seems like it's like saying, oh, it's not raining, there's a high pressure system coming in. Like, it seems like an explanatory principle kind of thing. So that's good. I don't know what the point of laughter is. There's some clearly, there's like therapeutic point to laughter, and there's people who do laugh therapy, which I think is a cool idea. Laraji, if you know him, right?
Yeah. But Brian, this is good because you're pushing it to illustrate a great McLuhan thing. A cliche can become an archetype, and an archetype can come back to a cliche. And that's what everybody says. Well, what's the function of laughter? To relieve tension. And then I say, Gurdjieff said it's the reconciliation of yes and no. So it's
Yeah.
like that. But McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen. He says, behind every joke, there's a grievance. Now, I don't like the word every, but just your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Behind jokes, there's a grievance.
Oh, usually, often a lot. I think that's true. I think that's true.
And then
or mockery of something or somebody,
yeah, this is good, Brian, because I'm glad you brought up David Mish. So one of my questions for years was, can satire be destructive? And people go, yeah, because if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill you, some people think death is destructive.
Self-destructive, yeah.
But Mish said it in front of an audience, can satire be destructive? And he goes, that's the job of satire.
That's his
Now
job.
that's very interesting, because Jonathan Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own.
Ah, interesting.
I mean, just talk about satire and wit in your songwriting. Why did you go that route, or what do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's very pointed, making fun of some ideas. Sometimes it's kind of obvious. I have a song. I have a song called "You're Like Hitler," where I send up the idea of people always calling people they disagree with Hitler. And then, of course, the song kind of came a little too close to home when we had, Trump as president, and he was a little bit like Hitler, more like Mussolini. But I put that in the song too. Satire. Yeah. I have a song on that same album, Levity and Novelty, the comedy album, where I do like a fake YouTube tutorial on how to use a piece of equipment in the program Logic Audio, Logic Pro. So I do I pretend to be, I impersonate this guy saying, "Hey guys, nice to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to give you the tutorial." So it's just like, making fun of, the 15-year-old that you always have to go to on YouTube to figure out how to use any gear. And then I have music going along with it. And so it's mocking. So if like somebody who actually did that saw it, they might feel like they were insulted, if they saw themselves in it, contrary to what Swift says.
Well, no, Brian, we need more fake YouTube tutorials, and you should work. Tyler Bartram, you've watched his Zappa tutorials, and they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, dude, we got to do a spoof one. And he's going to do one, but it's going to be half real. It's going to be on a stupid Zappa song. And we're going to do it, with the green. I'm talking, I want the green line to be going.
Oh, yeah.
You follow.
Yeah.
But the Hitler thing was great, because Jiminy Glick asked Mel Brooks in their interview, he goes, what do you have against Hitler? To Mel Brooks, But I asked for 90 minutes. We got about 12 more minutes. Just
okay.
Can you go a little over, or you got to go in? Okay, just not much over, but on satire for a second. A lot of people, I grew up, that was the week that was Harry Shearer. It's called fake news. Now it's called satire news, and fake news became something else.
Yeah.
But, Susie watches Colbert, and that's how she gets a lot of her news. And it is real news to a point, but they're making fun of it. Is satire news more, since it's so dominant, is it more activate people or more pacify people?
I don't watch it enough to know. Yeah, but it's a good question. Does it may really pacify people in some way. Like, oh, good, we all agree we're okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like same with political docs. Hardcore political docs have swooped over us for 40 years now.
Yeah.
Really deep. Some of them are deep, investigative journalism. Well, then they sit at home and go, "Well, I agree with that. Now I'm not going to do anything." You know.
Yeah, I think those are probably more useful than just the
More, yeah.
than the comic ones. Although, I mean, I love Colbert. I mean, it's particularly I miss the Colbert Report. That was great.
Yeah.
But
Okay, let's get to some of our normal script questions here.
normal script, yeah.
The normal script. I asked this one lady, I says, "Don't give me all your stock lines. I've listened to them for 20 years and I love them, but we want to get deeper." And she goes, "Drop your script, Jerry." I was like, uh-oh, can't handle my own. Okay, tell me what you've been making music for many years. Tell me one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Hmm. Well, a lot of things have stayed the same.
Well, just one or two. What's same?
I'd say that I like a certain density of activity in my music.
Yeah.
So I like I've I the first recordings I made were the band Some Philharmonic, and we had there's always a lot of I always liked a big not a chamber sound, but like an orchestral sound, even though
Yeah.
it's like just a band. But I
Yeah.
liked I like the idea of a lot of parts happening at once, and so that's something that I've often done and still do. So my music has a density to it. A lot of the chords change quickly, or there's a lot of density to the lyrical content, a lot of ideas. Anyhow, so it's dense. What has changed? I think my attitude about lyrics and my I've become a lot more careful about lyric writing than I originally was. I mean, I always had a way with words, but I was sloppy and sort of tossed a lot of stuff off when I was, first making songs and making music. And I think I've become much more coherent, or much more, there's the whole 60s, 70s style of songwriting, of lyric writing, where it's, impressionistic, and, you can say vague things, and it still goes on to this day. The song can be about
Yeah.
anything, let the listener be the one to interpret what it means. And, that's all very well and good. But in 1996, I got into the BMI Lehman Engel Musical Theater Workshop in New York, and
Yeah.
was studying writing musicals, and tried writing musicals, and started writing musicals. And musical theater writing is complete opposite of pop songwriting, in that you are a character telling, explaining something that's going on at a point, at a plot, in a plot. So it was very much, you have to be very specific. You can't just be whimsical and
Yeah.
poetic. You have to be say something that the character would say. So so I think that was very helpful for me in terms of songwriting, and that has changed my attitude about not just letting it be whimsical off the top of my head, but having it have a real meaning.
Thanks, Brian. That was really articulate, and remind me too of I met Mark Mothersbaum many years ago, and I said, So what do you guys think of Zappa? And he goes, well, all the guys in my band like him, but I think his lyrics are too 70s. I said, Frank's too everything. What do you mean? But Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Yeah.
Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
A weakness I turned into a strength. Well, I am not a very facile guitar player or instrumentalist. So I think it didn't come naturally to me I can't play fast runs. I'm not, I think it didn't come that naturally to me. So I think probably because of that, I focus more on the writing of things than on the playing of things. So that's probably a weakness that became a strength.
That's beautiful. That's like my line I love. I saw Albert King at the Music Machine years ago, and every solo was the same, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
It was like he did the same bend every time. It's like, what the fuck? And that was the beauty of it too.
Yeah, that's great.
How do you find peace of mind?
How do I find peace of mind? I ride my bike every other day.
Nice.
Up into the top of the hills in Griffith Park. So I ride for about an hour and 10 minutes. Go up and down about 5 steep hills, and just doing that every other day is great.
I am so with you. The turning of our legs and wheels, you get your best thinking done. It's
absolutely.
It is such a miracle thing. I mean, Susie and I and you, it's so amazing. It's just that bike riding is the most dangerous sport in the world.
It's kind of dangerous. Yeah. That's why I do it in the park, because most of it's no cars. So
yeah. And I know you have some witty songs about God, but I wanted to bring this up really quick. I dropped it earlier on. If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
You're still alive.
Dude, that is the best. Yeah, that's Susie, Bill McDougall, Susie's friend who played funny songs to her. He said, we made a mistake. You're going back.
You're going back. That's even better.
But this whole thing about God, that was good. I like that. This is what Harold Bloom said. And I love what he says. And I'm just curious your feedback on it. He said, do you believe in God? And then Harold Bloom says, my attitude towards Yahweh is that I don't like him and I don't trust him and I wish he'd go away, but he won't because he's built into the language.
Interesting. Wow.
And then he says, as Nietzsche said, so Nietzsche said that he says he's part of the way we think. As soon as you use a verb involving being, you're in trouble. So just this idea is amazing. And the backup question would be, do you pray?
So you dropped out a little bit. So what was the first?
Basically, your ideas are reflections on what Bloom said. I don't like God. He won't go away, but he's built into the language. And then, do you pray?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I do pray, because I mean, I don't formally pray, but when there's something that I really want to happen, I really, really hope for it to happen. I go hope, 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 hope. And there's really no difference between hoping like that and praying, because you're hoping. Why are you hoping? If it's just completely, if you're really neutral about it, then, that might happen, that might not. Trump might get reelected, Trump might not, whatever. No, you hope. And you're like, oh yes, we're all hoping together. And that's fucking praying, no matter whatever you call it. So So yes, I do all that. And if I was like into baseball, I'm sure I would be like, hope, 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 hope for my team. So I pray.
Brian,
I pray all the time.
this is Krasner's joke. I love. It's like the little kid's up to bat, and he goes, "Please God, let me hit a home run." And the pitcher is there. He goes, "Please God, let me strike him out." And the clouds part, and God's voice says, "You superstitious fools."
That's great.
Can you forget to die?
I don't know what that means.
Oh, right. That's the answer I get the most. Okay.
I'm trying to find some meaning in that, Jerry. I don't know.
That's all right. Let's go on. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I can't repeat it here.
That is the best. I've never had that answer, but you got to hear Dr. John said he answered all these questions, and that one he goes, "I won't go there." Like it was some voodoo thing, like you're walking down the street.
Yeah.
That's good. Should toilet paper come off the roll over or
over?
under? Why?
That's the way it's always been done.
But guess what? That's the patent has it going over 100 years ago. But 5% of people say under, and they have reasons.
I'm sure they do.
Just a couple more and we're out of here. These are 5 quickies from Alan Watts, just off the top of your head in a couple words. Who started it all?
Neanderthals.
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
Right where it came from.
Who's cleaning it up?
We are.
Is it serious?
Yes.
Wow, Brian, you're good. This is fun. A couple more. Tell me something good you never had and you never want. So it's good, you never had it, but you never want it.
Something good that I never had that I never want. I don't know, like a hometown.
A hometown. That's a good answer. You know what the answer I get the most?
What?
Fame, money, and heroin.
Ooh, heroin,
that is weird. Yeah. Okay. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would duck into the vomit because vomit's better.
That's good, Brian. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I like the spreading out of expertise that that people are kind of becoming more expert at a lot of different things, maybe because of the internet.
Yeah.
And just I'm impressed with how well young people play music.
Yeah. No, it's pretty amazing how they can give you reactions, do these tutorials, play music. And, like I do this. I don't know if you do it, but I recommend it. Go to Tiny Desk concerts by NPR and watch the first 5 seconds. And the guy's a pretty good, what do you call it? DJ. The
Yeah.
guy who's booking them, he's
Yeah,
pretty good.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, Domi and what's his name? DJ JD Beck, that trio. If you haven't seen her, Domi, DOMI, and type in DOMI and Flintstones theme. I mean, this woman plays Art Tatum to Stevie Wonder to
Wow.
Joe Zawinul. Like it's humanly impossible what she's doing. But they asked him, they got written up in the New Yorker a couple weeks ago, and they go, where did you get your music taste from? And they go, YouTube algorithm.
YouTube. Yeah.
Not that, but that sounds like that's horrible. No, it isn't. I get it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like we grew up going to a record store, or
Yeah.
our friends said, check this out.
Yeah.
And now this AI thing suggests things to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So it is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's encouraging.
2 more and we're out of here. Thornton Wilder wrote a pretty good play, Our Town, 1928. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Brian, you laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't answered this. What's it really all about for you?
As related to that Thornton Wilder quote?
And again, you put in the context you want. So you can say the Thornton Wilder quote, or however you want to, expound on it.
I don't think it's all about, I think theater can be all about confessing and hiding. I think that's a real good insight into theater.
Yeah.
And I'm embarking on a theater project right now. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. I don't think it's all about confessing. I think it's all about, it's many different things. I think art is much bigger. I think theater has a lot of constraints, which are, probably good things to have. Theater is great in that, you can, that you've got the audience making believe with you, that you've got the audience helping you do all this make believe. But the theater tradition is very strong, and there's certain themes that get repeated over and over again in certain plays, and particularly if you're working in musicals, which I'm doing, there's a lot of, it's like a lot of musicals with the same damn theme. And I think it remains to be seen how well you can do something with a different kind of theme. How successful you can be trying to do something with a different kind of theme. And I'm interested in doing some different kinds of themes in my theater stuff. So I think some of it is just sort of a conservatism among theater goers.
Yeah.
But I think the whole world is so full of different kinds of art these days. I think there's some good, there will be some good, interesting, wide open stuff coming down the pike.
Yeah. And Brian, I would say, knowing your music for years and appreciating it, it's a hard thing to absorb your influences and then abandon them. Mm-hmm. So you don't become, he's a blah, blah clone. Yeah, and it is hard. And it is a beautiful thing how you articulate that. And you got all my questions, you put them into the context you want. In that regard, people don't think of Thornton Wilder as the theater. They go, what's it all about for me? You mean it is blah, blah, blah. So bonus questions, because you answered that so good, is, do artists have moral obligation?
Yeah, everybody has moral obligations, right?
I think that's a good way to put that. Then how about, do artists have accessibility obligations?
No, I guess not. I don't know. I mean, there's
Yeah,
people. I mean, if you just feel like doing something that's only going to make you happy, that's fine.
yeah,
I think, but the moral obligation is interesting because I was thinking about that. Two things I've been doing recently: watching TV, watching this TV show Homeland,
yeah,
which is about a spy, and it's about the CIA. It's a very kind of um, politically all over the map show, but kind of naive in one way, but very sophisticated in another way. It's about all this sort of Middle Eastern politics and then domestic politics and spy craft and all this stuff. Um, and it's a dark show, like a lot of shows,
yeah,
recent shows. It's dark and it's full of this woman who has the main character has all these mental problems, and so it's dark and there's people assassinating people and all this. Meanwhile, I'm reading the Mark Lewisson Beatles recording sessions book, which is a painstakingly, like, every tape that the Beatles recorded from 1962 to 1970, and it's just like the real nerd kind of.
yeah.
Ooh, and then Jeff Emmerich came in and he was working on in Studio 2, but he worked on and then they bounced down uh Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to a 2-track, and so it's like total. But so I'm immersed in the Beatles, and the Beatles are so fucking wholesome, they're
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
they're sending out good vibes almost all the time, even when it's like creepy stuff like
yeah,
Come Together. It's like they're just giving this incredible vibe of goodness. And then like this TV shows that they have on TV now are like blah, blah, and they've got this darkness that is just kind of unbearable. And I just like, I watch the show and then I go, and then I look at the Beatles book and I like, even though it's like a kind of a boring book because
yeah,
it's like these guys in the studio day after day, it's like, and it's just like this wholesomeness versus this. I don't
yeah,
know what you call the kind of art that is on like cable TV these days, but it's
yeah,
mostly not really wholesome. And we're
yeah,
really into this non-wholesomeness stuff. And then I just, it was an interesting question about what is the moral. I mean, certainly there's like really questionable politics in this show as well,
yeah.
and it's like, they don't seem to take their moral responsibility too well. Although, they tend to be responsible about, I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it was good what you brought up because it's the yin and yang, yes and no, or the duality that you're finding your balance in, so you can
Yeah.
see the two at once, and yeah, it's compare and contrast.
Yeah.
But I do love the $100 Beatles book, which I bought at my library sale for a quarter. It's like
What,
this thick and this big, and it has the great, because I know it. It has the great quote where John Lennon said, "When I was reading Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, it felt as though I was talking to a friend." And it was amazing.
that
But
makes sense, doesn't it?
it does. But last question, and I hope this never ends. What a delight and joy. I really learned a
Great
lot
talking to you,
from,
Jerry.
and I thank you. What gives you the most optimism?
Um, well, what gives me the most optimism? I've kind of an optimistic person to begin with, and I've been maybe less optimistic in the last few years because things are going to shit. So, but I still basically optimistic in some way. I feel like what gives me the most optimism is that people seem more aware of the problems of like climate change
Yeah.
and a threat to democracy than they have ever before. So it seems like the
Yeah.
awareness is getting more I feel like that at some point we'll reach a tipping point, and it won't be called into question, and it'll just be a question of scrambling to get as much done as we can.
Increase in awareness. So it's really beautiful, Brian. What you got is full circle. The first question is, what gives you the most? What's the best thing for a human being? And I got that from someone who studied Wilhelm Reich, and they say the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Another human being. Yeah.
What did you say? Being among people.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
Now, the last question they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life, what gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people, and he spent his life cutting down people.
Yeah, of course.
But it was beautiful because you said people are, again, you said people. What gives you the most optimism? People becoming more aware. So again, I thank you so much, Brian. It's really been fun. And I do encourage people to visit your website because it is.
Please do. Listen to my music.
It is one hell of a well-designed website, and your music is so accessible. People can really access music these days beautifully. And to top it off, you're a great filmmaker. I mean, your videos are amazing.
Thanks so much.
They are really well done. I'm trying to hire you. And that's like, oh, well, maybe next year around, I can fit you in. All right, I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope this makes sense. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks so much, Jerry. It was really, really fun talking to you.
Yeah.